Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Dorney Park recreation. In the last episode, we worked on some nice buildings and station areas and rides, etc. for the Planet Snoopy area, the center of our park here, to try to get the core layout laid down here. As you can see, we still have a ways to go. There's quite a few rides that haven't been built at all. But in the interest of doing something a little bit different today, so we're not stuck here in Planet Snoopy forever, I would like to move on and start work on a couple other sections of the park. Start branching outwards a little bit from this central area. I'm thinking we could either head to the left here towards the larger, more adult flat rides, such as the Tilt-A-Whirl, Music Express, Dominator, etc. Or we could head to the right and do some of the Midway near Wild Mouse and Hydra. Fewer rides to build over here, but we have a couple buildings we need to lay down, and it would be nice to get some more path in here so we could connect things to the main Midway and then build some of the more rides over here, because we've got Wild Mouse that we could hook up here if we went that route. So I think that sounds like a pretty good start. So I think that's what we'll do for today. We'll just kind of continue to build out some path, maybe make a couple buildings and some more placeholders for some of our shoestring rides we're going to make later. I think that sounds like a pretty good plan, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I've done a little bit of work expanding outwards towards where the main Midway is. We've got a couple little restaurants over here. Chickies and Pete's is here, and this is a shop that sells, I think, like chicken and tacos, something like that. At least it does in Google Street View, which is pretty old. I don't remember exactly what it sells now. I'll have to look that up later. So just getting some footprints for these buildings in here. These aren't final designs. I hope to make these look a little bit nicer eventually. After I built these, though, it looks like our main Midway was a little bit too far out from Planet Snoopy. So I'm pulling things back towards the Planet Snoopy area by a tile or two. I've got a placeholder here for Meteor. I'm going to color this one white too, just so I'm not confused. Meteor is a swinging flat ride. It's kind of like a swinging inverter ship, but you're in inverted seats. So I plan to shoestring this. It's going to look a lot like a Larson loop, but with two trains instead of one. Should be pretty straightforward as long as I can get it working correctly. So since we're over here, I was looking a little bit at the splash boats. So I have a placeholder here for the splash boat ride Whitewater Landing. And similar to Cedar Point, the Whitewater Landing at Dorney Park crosses over itself. The splash goes underneath the lift. In Cedar Point, I didn't have enough room to do it that way, so I tweaked it just to make it a straight oval shape. And I built that as the placeholder here. But I'm looking at the layout here, and it looks like we could probably actually do a diagonal here. And there's plenty of room since we're at the edge of the park. I think I mentioned that earlier. So I'm going to see if we can get a layout for this that is going to have that cool diagonal bit in here, and see if we can get that looking a little bit more realistic, a little bit more correct. All right, here's our Whitewater Landing. Turned out to work out pretty well with the wooden coaster acting as a stand-in for the lift. A couple places here where the overlap is a bit weird, especially here. I guess I left a piece there. The corners here, maybe I'll replace those with the larger standard corners. I needed to have a small corner here because it was not a lot of space getting this thing back into the station. Maybe I could figure out a different solution for that. And it is a bit silly how the peeps have to walk all the way around this area to get back to the Midway, but that's just how it is. I wish it were a little bit more figure 8 shaped. The bottom half of the 8 is very elongated here. The way the diagonal is, yeah, I guess there's nothing much we can do about it. But all things considered, not terrible for a crossover splash boats. Did a little bit of work here to add in some trees around here just to get a feel for what that might look like. A little bit of decoration here. Looking pretty okay. Turns out I need to move the meteor again, but that's fine. There's plenty of room for it. There's nothing else in this area except for the Hydra entrance, and as you can see, there's tons of room over here for it. And there's a path back here that leads to some pavilions, but not too worried about the placement of those yet. So I think I am going to move meteor again. Alright, so I think this is about where meteor is going to need to go. Again, that's why we're doing just placeholders for all the more complicated shoestring rides. Want to make sure that everything is in place before we build anything too crazy. I know I am doing things a little out of order compared to Cedar Point, where I built all the rides first and didn't decorate them until much later, but it is pretty satisfying to build a ride and decorate it all in one go. It makes the park look a lot more satisfying. It feels like I'm actually making progress and getting things accomplished, which is pretty cool. This isn't totally done yet. We still need to add a roof to the turnaround structure, and I do want to clean up the couple things I mentioned earlier, so I'm going to just do that here real quick before we move on. I don't like leaving a lot of little things unfinished. I have a tendency to do that. It's probably bad practice, and I need to actually finish things I start before I move on, so I don't have a bunch of little tiny bits of cleanup left to do all at the end, because that's not going to be fun. So let's go ahead and try to take care of as much of this now as we can. All right, I think that's gonna about do it for Whitewater Landing for today. Missed a couple supports in here, but I think the design we have here is gonna do it. There's definitely some more detailing we can do, especially around the back half here. Maybe some of the maintenance area as well. I added in some little backup boats. Thought that would be pretty cute. But yeah, so we've got a functional station. We've got our diagonal lift hill. Hid some of the supports with some invisible path pieces to make it look a little bit more like you would normally see on these kinds of rides. And yeah, liking it so far. So I think we're gonna stop with Whitewater for now, but we got some more time today, so I think I'm gonna move along, keep going down the Midway here. Take a look at Wild Mouse. It's been sitting here in the background waiting to get worked on. I think it's about time we get this thing laid in here. Starting to run into some issues a bit with the elevation. We're at kind of a transition point here where we're kind of half on one level and half on a higher up level, so I have to figure out a good place to add the slope transition, the elevation change. I think I want to have Wild Mouse up like this. I think we got room. There's some green space right here. I think it's got some maintenance stuff in it, like a little fenced off area. So definitely some margin that we can play around with here. But I think I'm going to keep Wild Mouse right here where I have penciled it in and continue to build the Midway out a little bit. Looking at it though, maybe I want to scooch it back a tile or two, because the Midway is going to be right up against the front where the station is going to be, and we're going to need a couple of tiles of room for the loading and unloading area. We're getting a bit close to where this shoestring ride in Planet Snoopy is supposed to be, so hopefully we can keep enough room in here. But we're gonna give it a shot and see how it goes. All right, here we have our completed wild mouse, at least completed for now. I think I stuck with the original design I had back in episode 1, and that worked out pretty well. I've rebuilt it so many times now, I still had to go back and reference the original design to get it just right. A lot of work going into making some custom supports. It's really difficult to make good-looking wild mouse supports. Got a couple references to glean from, but just seems like one of those things where the more bits of scenery you throw at it, the kind of better it all gets tied together. But it's kind of hard to say for sure if it's good or not. It does look like a bit of a mess, but I don't hate it. It's probably not bad, all things considered. This is my first time doing supports like this, and there's probably still some places I could improve them. There's still some areas where I think there's some missing, like over here. There's definitely some places where I think I missed a couple, and I gotta go back and kind of clean some of these things up. That being said, not terrible. The chain lift is even more obvious that it's kind of weird and wobbly now, I think, because I put some extra decorations around it to help support it. Maybe it's going to be fine. I'll have to think about it. I don't know if there's a whole lot we can do about it, considering that we're kind of locked into this size and shape of the coaster now. But overall, I'm not unhappy with it. I think I'm going to leave it like this for now. I think it is going to work out for our purposes. It fits in this base nicely. I like the look of it for the most part. So still some places, especially when I rotate now, I'm finding a lot of places where I'm missing a lot of supports. They only show up if you're looking at it from certain angles, as isometric view tends to do. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for today. A lot of progress made. I'm really happy with the way things are going right now. Really starting to flesh out some of the park. We got the wild mouse, we got the splash boats. Midway is starting to get tied together a little bit. Still a lot of little details and decorations to do, obviously, but I want to focus more on getting rides down, getting our big ticket set pieces in here, our big rides, our big buildings, making sure all those are in place before we do any of the filling in the little corners, like this section here between this building and the Midway and this green space. Don't know what's going to go there. Don't want to detail it too much yet. We'll get there later. I think next time we're going to probably continue along the Midway, maybe build out some more of this stuff here where the wave swinger is, maybe put down some of these buildings, or maybe we'll move towards the other end of the park. I don't know. We'll have to see how I feel. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching.